Hey, last Sunday's church service was great. I loved being with the body of Christ and worshiping. Jesse did a great job. Tim's sermon was inspirational. It's wonderful to be with the body of Christ. And for me, a lot of times you go to church and you feel like you're teed up for the rest of the week. But a funny thing happened to me. Within a half hour of leaving church, I was with a dear friend, and we were talking, and almost out of nowhere, I exploded into this angry rant of words that were extremely hurtful to her, and really grievous to me. Made her cry, and it ruined our whole day. And so I'm thinking, what is that all about? Maybe there's sin in my life, or gosh, I need to buckle down and have more quiet times, read the Word more. Maybe I'm demon possessed, or it was some kind of spiritual warfare. But I'm thinking maybe I should get counseling. What was it? I was looking at life through a broken lens, a worldview that caused me to believe something that was untrue about God in my life that provoked such an angry outbreak of words. Hebrews 13 talks about good and bad behavior. The writer talks about the need to love brothers, to be hospitable to strangers, to keep the marriage bed pure, to be content with what we have. He also says, don't love money, don't get involved in sexual sins. But what's interesting to me is that the 12 chapters before we get to the end of the letter talk very little about behavior. In fact, I don't think that there's one specific word about behavior in the preceding 12 chapters. But the writer does talk a lot about Jesus. He says that Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God. He says that Jesus overcame the devil and defeated death. He tells us that Jesus is our high priest and understands with deep empathy and sympathy our human condition, that he knows everything about us, even down to the very last detail, and yet he responds to us always in mercy and grace, and that he's 100% able to meet our every need. The writer also goes on to tell us that unbelief is the root to all sin, and it keeps us from experiencing the rest that God has for us, that active faith is what really pleases God, and that we're part of a bigger story, and that life is wrought with difficulty and hardship. But he talks very little about behavior until we get to chapter 13. Why is that? I think that's because true and lasting transformation happens when we're experiencing on a regular basis the intimacy of a good Trinitarian God. Our place in creation is in a face-to-face love relationship with God, and everything else falls in place behind that. Let me repeat that. Our place in creation is in having a face-to-face love relationship with God, and that everything else falls in place after that. How can I love my brother if I am not experiencing on a deep emotional level the unconditional love that God has for me? How could I ever think about entertaining strangers if I have not experienced the deep generosity that God has for me? How can I keep the marriage bed pure if I am looking for something other than God to fill my deepest needs for emotional intimacy? I can't. Generally speaking, our behavior follows our emotions, and our emotions are simply responding to what we are believing. Looking through a distorted lens will result in unwanted behavior. That's what happened to me last Sunday. I have some opportunities that I'm really excited about. These are things that I've dreamt about almost all my life. The problem is, I don't think I have what it takes to meet the challenge. I fear failure, and truth be known, in the deepest part of my heart, I believe I am a failure, in spite of the fact that I've got many successes that would prove the opposite of that. But that belief creates an angst inside of me, an emotional turmoil that's as painful as any physical pain that I might ever feel. And so, in my false belief and looking through a distorted worldview on Sunday, believing these negative things about me and not believing that God was enough to help me through my task. The emotions overcame me, and I exploded with words that were unfortunate and hurtful to a person I loved. But what is true is that God has given me some wonderful opportunities. And these opportunities are in line with my natural and spiritual gifting. He will not leave me alone. He's not going to forsake me. In fact, He will help me. If I fail, He's there to pick me up. When I take time to really soak in that truth, lining that up with what God says is true about me and true about Himself, well, I get excited. I'm not full of anxiety. I'm fired up, and I'm hopeful, and I feel good about myself. And when I feel good about myself, when my emotions are now responding to what I believe, and what I'm believing is what is true, what God says, and I'm looking with a clear eye through a lens of God's love and the Scriptures, well then, why would I ever explode in a rant of unkind words? I wouldn't. In fact, feeling that good, I might even want to entertain strangers.